All right, go ahead and read this one out loud.
A member of the British Parliament is reputed to have said, the first purpose of good social reform is to increase the sum total of human happiness. So any reform which makes somebody happy is achieving its purpose. Since the reform I propose would make my constituents happy, it is a good social reform.
Ooh, double conclusion, maybe. So what did you say was the conclusion?
I was kind of stuck on which was the conclusion. I didn't know if it was any reform which makes somebody happy is achieving its purpose, or it could have been, since the reform I propose would make my constituents happy, it is a good social reform. I didn't know if what he was saying was for the purpose of his reform, or he's like saying, oh, for example, like my reform is good because of this conclusion that reform makes somebody happy, that is achieving its purpose. Yeah.
So what is the number one or most common structure of an LSAT stimulus?
Premise, conclusion.
Yeah, premise. What kind of premise? Opinion of others or a principle.
Okay.
And then rejecting it. Like, they think this, however, they are wrong. Or our studies show this, but that is not right. Or one might think this, however, like, we always reject it.
Yeah.
So who in this quote here is reputed, a member of the British Parliament is reputed to have said, the first purpose of good social reform is to increase the sum total of happiness. So any reform which makes somebody happy is achieving its purpose. Yeah, this is definitely a stretch of a conclusion. But why do you think that this British Parliament is saying this? Do you think that he is saying this to say that any reform which makes somebody happy is achieving, or do you think that he's saying that the reform I propose would make constituents happy, it's a good reform? Do you think that he is saying that to prove to everybody that any reform which makes somebody happy is achieving its purpose? Or do you think that he's giving like this principle to prove what he's doing is right?
The latter.
Yes. And the big thing that we know here, the big trigger here is since. Since, premise, and then conclusion. And that one you really just have to ask yourself, why is he using this? And so this is definitely like premise, intermediate conclusion, and then we add these two together to get our main conclusion. Okay. So what is something that would weaken that his proposed would make because the reform he proposed would make constituents happy, so it's a good social reform? What's something that we potentially could add to that to weaken it?
His constituents don't make up the majority of society.
Right. Or oh yeah, yes, his constituents, yes. So yeah, how often does that happen in politics?
No, I can't relate to this at all.
Like, yes, how many people like vote on certain issues the way they do just because their constituents want that, but their constituents might not be representing the majority, or their constituents might not be right.
Yeah.
Okay.
A. Different things make different people happy. This is very general.
I think it's kind of tempting, honestly.
It's so tempting because it's like, yeah, that's so right. But then it's not saying,
That this thing,
yeah,
yeah. I actually would have been like, don't love it. I probably would leave it on the test.
yeah. The proposed reform would make few people happy, but would not increase the happiness of most other people.
Sorry, what answer did you say?
I'm trying not to read I said B. I said this. So yeah, this reform would make few people, but would not increase the happiness of most other people.
Okay.
C, I still kind of like this answer. Obviously, it's not right.
B, no, I'm kind of do too. I'm curious if I'm thinking now of why it's wrong.
No. The proposed reform would affect only the member of Parliament's constituents and would make them happy. I like this also.
See, I think that would weaken it because we're saying that this reform would only affect their constituents and would make them happy. I think C definitely weakens or strengthens. Sorry. I think C definitely strengthens that it's a good social reform.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes. Yeah. Because it's like, okay, then that's great. Because if you look at like the other parts, it's any reform which makes somebody happy is
Right.
doing its purpose. So like, yeah, this is good. Okay, next that. D, increasing some people's happiness might not increase the sum total of human happiness if others are made unhappy. Increasing people's happiness might not. I kind of also like this, but I feel like since this one is talking about like in general and his argument.
Let's go back to our stimulus. So the first purpose of good social reform, so this is our premise, is it increase the sum total of happiness.
Right.
So that sum total is important.
Okay. So increasing some people's, aka his constituents, might make them happy, but it might not increase the sum, which is also important, if others are made unhappy. But we don't know if others will be unhappy with this.
So this is we get to add. This is a bottom up question. So we get to assume any one of these is true.
Oh, okay.
We get to add, like if we would add this. So essentially what we're doing is pick one of these premises or answer choices and pick it and add it as a premise to our stimulus. So we get to say that that would be a rule.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Just to knock this one out, E, good social reforms usually have widespread support. Okay, but if going back to B, the proposed reform would make few people happy but wouldn't increase the happiness of most other people. I still feel like that sounds stronger.
So it does sound stronger. In weakened questions, typically we want weaker word or we want stronger wording. So you're right on that. But the reason that B is wrong is we're looking for the total we're looking for the sum total. So how we judge good reform is if the sum total of happiness goes up. So what if like the other people are just neutral?
Oh, right. So, well, then it would increase the total sum.
Yeah, so in turn, actually,
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense now.
yeah, where it doesn't weaken it enough. Where D is saying, like, hey, this could make your constituents happy, but it makes people even more unhappy, which that it makes them so unhappy that it actually goes down.
Okay, that makes sense.
Where A is like kind of like nice, but it's like, okay, cool. That's not okay. So are you very familiar with sufficient and necessary?
I am familiar. I sometimes just get like I need to brush up on that a lot.
Excellent. Okay, so for today, what we're